essentially, this is a session on financial planning, and especially for for us when we think about taking a sabbatical, or when we think about whether we can actually afford to take off work. This financial planning supports any need for either taking a sabbatical, early retirement, or whatever it is that we need to make sure our mental health is okay and we sort of leading a healthy life. So I thought this is a quite an important topic for the community. So essentially, the idea of today's conversation is achieving life's goals through financial planning. So the financial planning is not the end in itself; it's a means to an end more than anything. So the first and most important thing to do is to figure out what our life's goals are, go from there. So when I say life's goals, a great way to do this is do like a vision board for your mid to long term. It's not just for a year, it's for the long term. All of us want to retire, right? So retirement is sort of one thing that needs to be there as the first goal, but there could be anything depending on our life circumstances in terms of other financial goals that we want to plan for. So essentially that would be either a child's education in our case. It could be a sabbatical and a couple of years that we need. It could be sort of travel or buying a car or whatever it is that is a financial goal or the life goal, then can work its way into a financial plan. So the first and foremost thing to do in all of this is to have a sit down to think about what it is that you want for your life in the coming 10 to 20 years time frame. uh, what we will cover today is four things. One is creation of an emergency fund. The second is insurance. The third is managing debt. And the fourth, finally, is investment. So these are sort of the key tenets of personal finance planning. Um, I'm not sure why I'm not able to move to the next slide though. Let me see. Yeah. So, like I said, the first thing, vision boarding is the first step to. So, do put down your goals either on Canva or on a board in terms of what your goals are apart from retirement. Depending on what your hobbies, passion, needs, etc. are. The first and foremost thing is to create an emergency fund. So, what we mean by an emergency fund is, we're not sort of credit card dependent. If there is a sort of an emergency in the household, right? So the emergency could be anything from having to pay sort of an unexpected bill, for instance, an unexpected expense that comes our way. So I don't include medical emergency in this because the assumption that I'm making is we always have medical insurance, but ultimately the hypothesis of emergency funds is supposing our we lose our jobs for whatever reason. The theory is that we take anywhere between 6 to 12 months to find the next job. So that's the standard time frame an individual takes to land a role. So the emergency fund is actually essentially a corpus that we put away that is easily accessible. So in a form like FD, and it should ideally cover 6 to 12 months of our expenses. So that's essentially the emergency fund. So for example, if my monthly expense is about 50K, my the best emergency fund that I can have is for 12 months, which is about 6 lakhs, but at least 3 lakhs we should have as an emergency fund so that if there's any contingency, that fund can be withdrawn. Now the thinking here is an emergency fund is only to be used for a true emergency, which means that we don't touch the fund until and unless there is a true emergency and we need to manage it. So essentially that's with respect to having the emergency fund as a starting point for all of the financial planning. The second tenet is insurance. So after we have had our emergency fund, or even as we start creating our emergency fund the same month, if we do not have insurance, then ideally we should take an insurance. So medical inflation is double that of regular inflation. It's about 15 to 20%. We've seen some really bad examples, or cases during COVID where there were people who were put on the ventilator and then put on an ECMO and things like that, and have had to sort of even pay up to 1 crore or more in insurance. I mean, in hospital bills. So we are almost one hospitalization away from bankruptcy if we don't have medical insurance. So even before we think about life insurance, I think the first thing we need to think about is medical insurance. And by medical insurance, ideally, if you have a family, a nuclear family, a family floater is a great way. We can have family floaters for about, anywhere between 10 lakhs to 1 crore, is a good medical insurance to have, so that if there's any exigency, that can be taken care of. HDFC Ergo, I'm told, is the best med insurance with no room rent capitalization and things like that. There is also a platform called Ditto Insurance where, it's like a WhatsApp chat where we can talk about our situation and they will itself suggest the right insurance for us. So, highly recommend that versus Policy Bazaar. Now, in terms of medical insurance, once your medical insurance is sorted, remember that for parents and things like that, it shouldn't be part of family floater. It should be a separate insurance. Simply because if we combine parents into the same family floater, then what happens is the most senior members' age gets into consideration for premium. So the premium goes higher. So what we do is we do a family floater plus something completely different, as another floater for parents, so that the premium at least is not as high. So that's another thing to keep in mind when we do insurance. The second part of this is life insurance. So life insurance, if we don't have any dependents, we don't need any life insurance. But if we do have dependents, say children, wife, so I mean spouse, even dependent parents for that matter, taking a life insurance is very important. And in terms of life insurance, the way to compute life insurance is two things. One, if you have any debts, the dependents are not ending up paying for the debt, so it should cover any debts that we may have. Plus, it should also, sort of mean that the quality of the life of the dependents is not impacted even if something were to happen to us. So, we will talk about what is called FIRE, which is financial independence and retire early. But essentially, a life insurance should be that. So, one rule of thumb, for example, a very simple rule of thumb for life insurance is 25 times annual expenses can be the life insurance that we provide for our family. Again, like I said, the earlier we take life insurance, the better the premium is. So if you are a little bit late in the day to take life insurance, and again, if you have a reasonable corpus, then you can take a call in terms of how much life insurance to do. Again, like I said, Ditto Insurance is great. You just go, it's not spammy. We talk about in on WhatsApp what our circumstances is, who our dependents are, etc. And then basing that, they will provide us some reasonable life insurance policies. So the recap, emergency fund, 6 to 12 months, and life insurance, med and life insurance are sort of the underlying, foundational pieces that we need to set in place before we do anything else, right? And then once we have that, the third thing is debt. So, we all have this currently in this economy. It's very easy to take on debt. I mean, credit card companies are hard selling credit cards to us. Personal loan people are hard selling personal loans, saying pre-approved loans, etc. So it's credit debt has become such an easy thing. I mean, we call it credit, but actually it's debt. Debt has become so easy that we sometimes take on debt without realizing that we need to pay it up in full. So even if we were to think about it now, for example, there's a lot of marketing around credit cards rewards points and things like that. But ideally if we are paying the credit card balance in full, then it's okay the next month. But if you're only paying minimum dues, for instance, on a credit card, then it's a huge issue, because what then happens is the difference between the minimum dues and the total credit card outstanding, the interest rate can anywhere be between 36% to 42%. So it's sort of the worst kind of loan we can ever take. So if you don't have debt, congratulations. Let's try and not create any further debt, and I don't include home loan in this case. So what do I mean by let's not try and create more debt? It means that if I want to go buy a fridge, for instance, let's not put it on an EMI. Or if we go buy an iPhone, let's not put it on an EMI. Why do we say that? Because the moment you put it on an EMI, the assumption we are making is the EMI is going to be against future cash flows that we will get. So the EMI presupposes that we will continue to have a job and the income keeps coming in, and therefore the EMI will offset the job. But what it does not consider is any other emergency that would come, a job that might not be there, etc. So if there is a large purchase that is planned, instead of creating debt in EMI, the best way is to save and then buy full of on full cash. Now, if we do have debt, for example, that we need to sort out, then the first thing to do is consolidate all the debt. How do we consolidate all the debt? So if we have credit card debt of 2 to 3 credit card companies, and if we have, personal loan, etc., combine all of the debt into the lowest possible interest rate loan that we can get. Two loans that are really low is one personal loan, which is anywhere between 10 to 13%, which is also high in itself. And the second is gold loan. So any secured collateral loan, which will be about 8 to 10%. So if you have gold lying around, a gold loan would be a better bet. So for example, of all the credit card companies and the loans that we have a total of 3 lakhs of loan that we need to figure out and finish. The best way is to first consolidate all this as personal loan or gold loan, including the credit card loan. So if you're not able to pay the credit card debt even for a month, then consider consolidation. And then the quickest and fastest way to redeem the personal loan or gold loan is to pay it monthly. So maximize the amount of EMI you can pay against this loan, and minimize the number of months you need to take. So if you have 3 lakhs, can you pay a lakh a month for 3 months and finish it off? If not, can you pay 50,000 a month for 6 months and finish it off? So depending on the capacity that we have, we try and close all of the loans as quickly as is possible. So that's the third tenet. Create an emergency fund, create your insurances, and then work towards consolidating your debt and closing out any further debt that you may have, by maximizing EMI, etc. So once we have completed the debt space, then the next piece is income. Now, we need to sort of think about income from the point of view of diversifying our portfolio again. And what I mean by that is a lot of us are in single jobs. So if you think about a household, sometimes, the husband and wife are not working, only the husband is working. Again, we are one income away from, a lower tax bracket and, bankruptcy. So very important, ideally, to diversify the portfolio. Both the partners are working. If not, then at least, we need to think about what more can we do to supplement our primary source of income, or what more can I do to enhance the current income that I have? Because the biggest lever you will always have in creating personal wealth is active income, and the active income then can be rerouted to investments that then create passive income separately. So there are a lot of sort of videos around how we can do this. We can monetize. One of the quickest ways to monetize and create secondary income is, say, take tuitions. I mean, it's an age old thing. A lot of people have done that. People continue to do that. Coaching is a new age field. Consulting is another one. So in addition to whatever full-time role that we have, we need to sort of start thinking about what is the income that we can create to supplement this income. The second thing to think about is, even in a primary source of income, how can we enhance it as much as we can? There are two ways to enhance it, right? One is to sort of do really well in our jobs, and then sort of climb the ladder quickly, and the company sees us as invincible, and therefore they retain us with higher and higher packages. The second is to sort of keep jumping from one company to another company, and each time we jump, we negotiate a 20% increase, etc. So there are multiple ways to build the active income depending on your life situation. But always consider that your active income can sort of grow multifold. There are cases of people who have sort of really enhanced their CTCs, etc. Active income can sort of grow multifold. Passive income has certain limitations to how it can grow, right? So invest in yourself first is a fundamental principle of enhancing active income. Once we've done that, there are three arithmetic rules that we will talk about in the next three slides. Rule number one is the 50-30-20 rule. The 50-30-20 rule is, if we get, say, 50,000 a month, 50% should go into our expenses, so needs, etc. 20% should go into long-term investments like retirement, etc. 30% should go into short-term financial goals, such as either buying a car or the child's education or travel plan or whatever that is. That 30% we put away for our wants, so that we then, after 6 months, for example, if we want to travel somewhere and it takes 2 lakhs to travel, we have put that money away, the 30% away, and then in 6 months or so, then we can travel, right? So 50-30-20 is a good rule of thumb to think about how much of your income should go into investments, how much of your funds should go into savings for long term wants, and how much of your 50% of your expenses should go into your needs. So that's one arithmetic principle to keep in mind. The second arithmetic principle is the 15-15-15 rule. So how do you get to your first crore? The first crore is, if you put away 15,000 in SIP at 15% interest for 15 years, you should have your first crore. So in terms of we talk about the power of compounding and things like that. These days a lot of financial influencers are dissing the SIP model, but for a lot of us, a SIP is a great way to ensure. SIP is standardized investment planning. And standardized investment planning is, we put away a monthly sum, like the 20% and the 30% that we just talked about in the previous slide. We put that away into mutual funds, etc. And so therefore it enforces a discipline in saving and investment that otherwise will be hard to achieve. So I still believe that a SIP is a great way to sort of invest. 12 to 15% is a good market return. And if we sort of stay invested for 15 years, we kind of get our first crore. And from there, we can sort of double the money, etc. So time is the best compounder of wealth, if you will. And the sooner that we're able to start. So if we haven't started yesterday, today is a great day to start investments. Now, the third rule is the rule of 72. Now, that's depending on whatever is your rate of return, it tells you how long your investments will take to double. It'll also tell you how long your expenses will also take to double. So if the 72 is a denominator, 72 being the numerator, if our rate of return is 12%, 72 by 12 means that it'll take another 6 years to double whatever investments we've made. So supposing 15, 15, 15, we put away 15K for 15 years for 15 months. 15 years at 15%, we get a 1 crore. Once we get a 1 crore, supposing our rate of return is 12%, right now the market is volatile and things like that. So if our rate of return is 12%, 72 by 12, it'll take 6 years for the first crore to become the second crore. So that's the other thing to think about. Now, the third, if we have an inflation of 6%, it'll also tell you how long will it take to double that expense. So supposing on a monthly basis, we spend about 22 by 6, it will take 12 years to double because of inflation, the expenses will take 12 years to double. So the 1 lakh will be equivalent to 2 lakhs in 12 years. So this is really important to compute a FIRE number as well. Because while we keep in mind how much money we want, we will also need to keep in mind the inflation creep that will sort of, come over time. So that's why the rule of 72 is a very helpful arithmetic rule. Now, the last piece around this is compounding and, sort of compounding and how compounding works, right? So we said that with the rule of 72, 1 crore became 2 crores in 6 years. Do you know how much the 2 crores will be in 24 years? Any guesses? So think about it like this, right? So normally we would think, oh, 24 years is 4 times 6. So it'll be 4 to 8 crores. But actually, the 1 crore becomes 2 crores in 6 years. The 2 crores becomes 4 crores in 12 years. The 4 crores becomes 8 crores in 16 years, and 8 crores becomes 16 crores in 24 years. So the thinking here is time is our greatest ally, and if we can stay invested in the long term, put your money and forget about it and let it grow, then when you come back to it, it would have grown substantially as well. So that's essentially the power of compounding. Okay, so now that we've understood the 72, 15, 15, 15, we've understood the rule of 72, which is how much time does it take to double our expenses or inflate and our income. And we've also seen how compounding works. Now we come to what is the FIRE number, which is financial independence and retire early. It's a very well understood finance term these days. But really, the idea of FIRE is, what does it take for us to retire? Now, how do we retire, right? Now, once we build a corpus, unlike our parents who had pensions and things like that, we don't have the luxury of pensions. Having said that, once we retire, we do need some sort of a passive income that will kick in. Now, how does those passive incomes work? The passive income is a SIPS SWP model or a mutual fund SWP model, where once we've created a corpus, then we can withdraw a certain percentage of that corpus to fund our lifestyle. Now, normally the rule of thumb is we withdraw 4% as SWP. So, why the 4% principle is because if your corpus is growing by 12%, if we withdraw 4%, the assumption is it will still continue to grow by another 8% or so. So, it still is, you can still withdraw from a corpus that will continue to grow and not deplete. So that's essentially where the 4% principle comes in. So therefore, the FIRE number needs to be 25 times, because 4% is actually divided by 0.4% is equal to 25 times the corpus. So if our annual income, our annual expense is, 50,000 per month today, then if you apply 25 times that, so 6 lakhs into 25, it will be 3 crores that we talk about. But we also said that this particular number will double, right? So the 1 lakh will become 2 lakhs because of inflation in 12 years. So supposing I want to retire in 12 years, and my annual expenses today, my monthly expenses today is 50,000. That 50,000 will become 1 lakh in 12 years. So 1 lakh into 12 lakhs into 25, 3 crores is what I will need to retire in 12 years. Similarly, here the math is 2, right? So the assumption made is today I spend 1 lakh a month. My annual expenses is 1 lakh a month. So therefore, in 12 years, that 1 lakh becomes 2 lakhs. So 2 lakhs into 12 months into 25 times, I need 6 crores to retire. So that is my FIRE number as of today. Now, there is another concept called post FIRE, which is what do I need today to get to 6 crores in 12 years. So we also saw, right, that according to the rule of 72, at a 12% return, it takes 6 years to double. So therefore, in 12 years, it will be 4 times. So if you want 6 crores in 12 years. 6 by 4, we need 1.5 crores today. There's another math as well where if we don't have the 1.5 crores, it's perfectly fine. Then we figure out what the SIP amount is that we need to put in to get to the 6 crores. So there are two things here. So if we think like, okay, in 12 years, I'm not going to be able to get to 6 crores, then we need to enhance the time. So I say, okay, instead of retiring in 12 years, I retire in 18 years or I retire in 24 years. So that's essentially by computing a fire, it'll kind of give us a sense of how much more time we need to, stay in a job. It'll also tell you how much investments we need in order to get to a retirement number. There's another really great way to do this, which is Chat GPT. Go to Chat GPT and say, I am so and so years old, my annual income is my annual expenses is so and so, or my monthly expenses is so and so. Assuming a rate of return of 12%, and an inflation rate of 6%, what should my fire number be if I were to retire in so and so years? So if you ask ChatGPT that question, it will throw you the answer as well. So you don't necessarily need to compute it in your head, although these are basic arithmetic principles. You can also go to ChatGPT and ChatGPT will tell you the exact fire number. It will tell you the coast fire number. So if of the 1.5 crores, say we have 50 lakhs, then the next question is, okay, how do I get to my 1 crore? It'll also tell you what the SIP amount we need to be investing in as well. So ChatGPT is a great way to figure out our fire number. I just wanted to kind of then talk about systemic investment plan, like I mentioned it earlier as well. But remember the SIP to SWP principle. So as we're working, we will continue to put our money away in systemic investment plan. The moment we stop working, then we kind of go into the systemic withdrawal plan where we take out 4% from our corpus to sort of, live a life. The SIPs can also go into financial planning for other short-term goals as well. So if you want to do a second MBA, or if you want to kind of fund our child's education, depending on the number of years that we have, we put another SIP to get to our financial goal as well. So it's not just retirement, it's also the interim life goals that we will have to fund for, that we can invest in SIP. This the other thing is around asset allocation. So if you think about how do we sort of allocate assets, the best way to do it is in mutual funds. So if you think about asset allocation, 60% should be sitting in equity, 10% in US equity if possible, 10% in debt, which could be as something as simple as FD, 10% could be gold ETFs, and 10% could be real estate in the form of REIT, etc. So, and then when you come to mutual fund equity allocation, 40% in large cap, 40% in mid cap, and 20% in small cap is a good way to allocate. There are two ways to sort of, invest in mutual funds. One is called the direct mutual fund, and the other is regular. In terms of the direct, it's like, you can go to their website directly. So Nippon, for example, or Motilal Oswal, whatever their mutual funds are, go to their sites and then you can directly buy direct mutual funds. And the expense ratio there will be anywhere between 0.5 to 0.6%. However, if we go to regular mutual funds, the expense ratio will be double, 1 to 1.1%. The regular mutual funds are normally given by financial planners, but the advantage of having a financial planner is that you can just forget about it and they will sort of manage your mutual fund allocation and put it in the right mutual funds, etc. Because there's so many right now. I think there are some 2,000 stocks and 3,000 mutual funds. Some crazy number of mutual funds are in the market and it can be quite confusing. The other thing is buy or sell a house. Buy or rent a house. So today there's a lot of discussion around what is the right time to buy a house, and essentially now we say that rental yield on a house is 2 to 3%, whereas even an FD will give you 7 to 8%, and if you think about mutual funds, it'll give you anywhere between 12 to 15 to sometimes 20% as well. So therefore, the thinking currently is, if you want to buy a house, you put a roof over your head, that's great. Then buying a house makes a lot of sense. But if you want to sort of, invest and then buy a house, that's also not a bad plan, because your mutual funds would have grown quite a bit, or your investment portfolio would have grown quite a bit, and then we can sort of afford a house as and when we are retiring. So that's another thing to think about in terms of real estate as well. The other rule of thumb is you should be able to put down 20% as EMI, 20% as upfront money on the loan, and then our EMI should not exceed 15% of our salary. So that's another way to think about whether this house is affordable or otherwise. And then credit card, we talked about credit card. Credit cards is a debt trap if you're not careful, because in our head also it's very hard to assume how much we will spend on a credit card, and sometimes the credit card bill itself will be higher than our salary, etc. So be mindful of credit card spends, and if you're not able to figure out and close month's payment, do the debt consolidation we talked earlier. Also, the rewards and the perennial chase of rewards, even 1 month of not paying a credit card bill will offset any rewards that credit card companies provide. So it's a marketing gimmick, at least in my mind, and we need to be very careful about how we spend our credit cards. We should not have more than 1 to 2 cards at any point in time, and even there, ideally 30% should not be spent in credit cards. Personally, I've sort of spent the credit card only twice last year, one for an iPhone and one for an iPad. And both the times, as soon as I paid the money, because there was some cash back, as soon as I used the credit card, I kind of already paid off the credit card debt, if you will, so that I knew how much was there in my bank account. So even if you're spending on cash back, make sure we sort of close the due as quickly as is possible. And then we can think about sabbatical leave, so that now we know what our fire number is and where we are, etc. Then it kind of will give us some comfort in terms of sabbatical leaves, etc. Now, the only thing I want to say is while the fire numbers is good to calculate, there are cases where people have retired even with 1 CR. And how they do it is they do the 4% SWP. So there is this example that a financial influencer talks about. Even one of my uncles who passed away, their family doing the same thing. So they had a 1 CR corpus. What they did is they put it away in mutual funds, and for 1 year they didn't touch it, and then from there on SWP they've been sort of withdrawing. So this example, I think, is this guy who did a corpus of 1 crore in 2014. He started withdrawing 50,000. Today I think he withdraws a lakh. He's withdrawn about 80 lakhs from the corpus, but his corpus has grown to another 2.5 CR, simply because of that rule of for 8% it continues to increase, right? So essentially, even though we talk about a fire number, which is a safe number to retire, know that if an emergency does hit, you can still retire at 1 CR, etc. And it should still keep us comfortable for a long time. With that, I think I can open the floor for questions, but I can just quickly recap. We talked about so I just want to go back to sort of the tenets before I open the floor. We spoke about the fire number. So we talked about if whatever is our expenses, monthly expenses, into 12 into 25 is our fire number. And if we were retiring in 12 years, that would mean that our investments would have quadrupled. So we need like 1/4 of the fire number today if we are retiring in 12 years. So do keep that in mind, and do think about ChatGPT, like I said. And I just want to sort of talk about emergency funds. So 6 to 12 months in emergency, have a medical insurance and a life insurance. Make sure you have a plan to pay off all the debt, and then think about investments like we discussed.